Welcome back to Mr. DuPage's classroom. This lesson is for my Algebra 1 class. It is 6.5 point slope form. What you see first is point slope form. It is a formula just like slope-intercept form and just like standard form. This is the third form we're going to look at, point slope form. What you're going to notice is there's a y minus y1 is equal to m, which we know is the slope, times x minus x1. Well, the y and the x, not the y1 and the x1, but the y and the x are going to stay y and x. The y1 and the x1 are going to come from a point. M is still the slope, just like it always is. Now, I want you to pay close attention to these negative signs. Okay? They are not subtraction. Think of them as saying opposite. Okay? Think of those as being opposite. So as we read this, it would be y, the opposite of y1, is equal to the slope times x, the opposite of x1. Okay? So let's give it a shot here. Example 1, give the slope in one point of a line, or given the slope in one point of a line, write the equation in point slope form. Well, remember, point slope form's at the top of the paper here, right? So what we're going to do is y, this would be y1. This 4 would be y1. So this is positive 4. We're going to use negative 4 is equal to our slope, so negative 2, times x. There's x1, that 2 is x1. The opposite of x1 would be negative 2. That's how we write something in point slope form. Okay? On to the second problem then. We would have, well, we have x1 and y1 as our point. So it would be y minus 0 is equal to our slope times x opposite of our point. This was a negative 1, so we used a positive 1. Okay? Now, we don't necessarily need to write y minus 0, so it would be y equals 5 times x plus 1. On to number 3, this is x1, this is y1, okay? So it would be y, the opposite of y1, so plus 6, is equal to 1 times x, the opposite of x1, so negative 2. Okay? And again, in this case, I don't need the 1 outside of my parenthesis, so I could just write y plus 6 is equal to x minus 2. And in fact, I wouldn't even need the parenthesis anymore. In that case, I could just have x minus 2. Okay? On to example 2. Here, it will not give us the slope, but it does give us 2 points. Anytime we have 2 points, we can find the slope. These points are x1, y1, x2, y2. So remember, it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So let's find our slope first. y2 is 4 minus y1 is 2 over x2 is 2 minus x1 is 0. That would get us 4 minus 2 is 2. 2 minus 0 is 2, so my slope is 1. Now, to write it in point slope form, I can actually write it 2 different ways. I can use the first point. If I do that, it would be y opposite of y1, so negative 2, is equal to my slope, so 1, x opposite of my x1, which is 0. That would leave me with y minus 2 is equal to x, actually, because x minus 0, I don't need to write the minus 0. I don't need to write the 1 outside, so it would just be x. If I wanted to use the other point, I could go ahead. I'm going to use green for that so you realize it's 2 different points. It would be y minus 4, y opposite of my y, in this case was 4, is equal to my slope, which is still 1, times x, the opposite of my x and my point, so negative 2. Okay? Then I could write this as y minus 4 is equal to x minus 2. And those are the 2 different ways I could write the point slope form. You will not be required to write both ways. I will only ask you to write it one way. If it were me, I would probably pick the one that had a 0 in it because it would just be easier and quicker to write. All right, problem number 8. My x1 is negative 3, my y1 is 1, my x2 is 2, my y2 is 6. So here again, my slope, I got to find my slope first. It'd be y2, which is 6, minus y1, which is 1, over x2, which is 2, minus negative 3, because my x1 is negative 3. 6 minus 1 is 5. 2 minus negative 3 is the same thing as saying 2 plus 3. So that's 5, so my slope again is 1. Using the first set of points, it would be y, the opposite of my y value, so negative 1, is equal to my slope times x, the opposite of my x value, is positive 3. Okay? Again, when my slope is 1, I don't need to write the parenthesis or the slope, so that would be the simplest form of my point slope form. Okay? On to the second point. If I were to use the second point, it would be y minus 6 is equal to 1, parenthesis, x minus 2, because I use the opposite of the y and the x in my point. And again, to simplify, it would just be x minus 2, and I would be done. Okay? Number 9. This one's a little bit different. Still going to look at x1, y1, x2, y2. Still going to try to find my slope first. So it'd be 7 minus negative 5 over negative 1 minus negative 1. Okay? Well, 7 minus negative 5 is the same thing as 7 plus 5, so that is 12. Negative 1 plus negative, or negative 1 minus negative 1 is the same thing as negative 1 plus 1, so this is 0, which means my slope is undefined. What do we know about undefined slopes? It means that it's going to be x equals. But what could x possibly equal? How can I figure that out? Well, let's look back at our points. This point, my x is negative 1. This point, my x is negative 1. So your x is going to be equal to negative 1. Okay? All right, down to example 3. Given the graph, write the equation in point slope form. So the first thing I need to find is my slope. If I start here, go up 2. So it went up 2. Then it went right 1, 2, 3. So my slope is 2 over 3. Okay? That's the easy part. Now, I do have 3 different points here. I'm going to use 3 different colors so that you can see, using 3 different points, how I can get 3 different point slope forms. They all mean the same thing, essentially, but that I can get 3 different point slope forms. So the first one's going to be this red one. That point is 1, 1. So my point is 1, 1, right? So to write my point slope form, it would be y, opposite of my y value, which is this one, is equal to my slope times x, opposite of my x value, so negative 1. That would be the first way I could write it. This next way I could write it, I could use this point, which is 4. I'm going to draw a line down to it. 4. Comma 3. So my point, if my point is 4, 3, my slope stayed the same, right? I didn't change my line. My slope stays the same, so it would be y, opposite of my y value, so negative 3, is equal to my slope, which is 2 over 3, x, the opposite of my x value, would be negative 4. That is the second way I could write it. The last way I could write it would be using this point. This point is negative 2, negative 1. That might be a little hard to see. But if my point is negative 2, negative 1, it would be y, the opposite of my y value, so positive 1, is equal to my slope times x, the opposite of my x value, so positive 2. And that is it. The most important thing here to remember, a couple things real quick. The first thing is our finding our slope using the slope formula. The y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Remember how to use that. If you are still struggling with that a little bit, please come in and see me. As far as the point slope form goes, remember that those negative signs or those subtraction signs in there really just mean the opposite of whatever my value is in my point, right? It's the opposite of whatever my value is in my point. Okay? Well, if you still have any questions on this, make sure you come in before school or before class and have a conversation with me about it. We can probably get you fixed up pretty quick. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching this video, and have a great day.